The emergency room doors exploded inward with a metallic crash that made every head snap toward the sound. What came through wasn't a gurney or a paramedic team. It was chaos wrapped in fur and fury. A massive German shepherd lunged into the fluorescent-lit space, muzzle pulled back, teeth bared, blood streaking its tan coat. Behind it, an elderly man in a tattered jacket stumbled, clutching his ribs, face gray as concrete. "Get that thing out!" someone screamed. The dog snarled, low and guttural, the kind of sound that came from battlefields, not hospitals. Security reached for their radios, doctors backed toward the nurse's station. A young resident froze mid-step, hand hovering uselessly in the air. Then she moved. A woman in pale blue scrubs stepped forward, no hesitation, no theatrics. White skin, auburn hair pulled back, face calm as still water. Elena Carter. Nobody important, just another night shift nurse they barely noticed. She knelt. "Easy. I've got you." The dog that had terrorized an entire ER went utterly silent, and 20 seconds later, security dragged her into an office and fired her on the spot. If you want to see how a forgotten soldier dismantles an entire system without raising her voice, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Mercy General Hospital buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over cracked linoleum that had seen better decades. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of shift where exhaustion became a second language, and every minute felt like wading through wet cement. Elena Carter moved through the corridor with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned long ago not to waste motion. Her scrubs hung loose on a frame that suggested she ate when she remembered, which wasn't often. Dark circles shadowed eyes that had seen things most people only experienced in nightmares, though nobody here knew that. To them, she was just background noise. The quiet one who took the worst shifts without complaint. "Carter, we need you in 3, a voice crackled over the intercom. She was already moving. Room 3 held a teenage girl with a sprained ankle and a mother who wouldn't stop talking about her lawyer. Elena wrapped the ankle, explained Rice protocol in a voice that suggested she'd done this 1,000 times, because she had, and was back in the hallway before the mother could finish her threat about substandard care. Dr. Marcus Webb passed her without acknowledgement, which was standard. Webb had been at Mercy General for 15 years and had perfected the art of looking through people rather than at them. He was good at his job in the way that competent technicians are good, efficient, precise, and completely devoid of warmth. "We've got incoming," the charge nurse announced, glancing at her tablet. Sharon Martinez had been running night shifts since Elena arrived 2 years ago, and their relationship existed in that professional space where neither particularly liked the other, but both recognized competence when they saw it. MVA, 2 vehicles, possible internal injuries. The ER shifted into organized chaos. Trauma bays prepped, equipment checked, the machinery of emergency medicine grinding into motion with the smooth inevitability of something that happened every night. Elena was restocking a supply cart when the doors burst open. The crash was wrong, too violent, too sudden. Not the controlled entry of paramedics, but something else entirely. The German shepherd came through first, a streak of tan and black moving like violence given form. Blood matted its coat, one ear was torn. Its eyes held something that made Elena's breath catch. Not wildness, but focus. Military focus. Behind the dog, an old man stumbled through, one hand pressed to his ribs, the other reaching forward like he was trying to catch something that kept slipping away. His face held the particular gray pallor of someone whose body was starting to make decisions his brain hadn't signed off on yet. "Jesus Christ!" someone shouted. The dog planted itself between the old man and the room full of strangers, hackles raised, lips peeled back from teeth that could tear through bone. The sound it made wasn't a bark. It was a warning in a language older than words. Dr. Webb backed toward the nurse's station. "Someone call security." "That's a trained animal," Elena said quietly, but nobody was listening. The security guard, a heavy-set man named Roland, who'd been hired more for his size than his judgment, advanced with his hand on his radio. "Sir, you need to control your—" The dog lunged forward half a step, and Roland nearly tripped over his own feet retreating. "Get animal control," Webb snapped. Elena watched the dog. Its positioning was textbook, defensive perimeter, protecting a principal. Its injuries were consistent with shrapnel wounds. The way it moved despite the blood suggested training that went far beyond civilian standards. And the old man behind it wasn't reaching for the dog. He was reaching for his ribs, where blood was starting to seep through his shirt. She made the decision in the space between heartbeats. Elena stepped forward, hands visible and empty, moving with the kind of careful deliberation that telegraphed intention without threat. The dog's focus snapped to her. She didn't meet its eyes directly, dominance challenge, but kept her gaze soft, peripheral. "Easy," she said, voice low and even. Not soothing, just calm. Statement of fact. "I've got you." She knelt slowly, making herself smaller, less threatening, extended one hand palm down, letting the dog process her scent. The animal's nose worked, reading her the way humans read faces. Something in its posture shifted, recognition of some kind, though she'd never seen this dog before in her life. "What the hell are you doing?" Webb hissed from behind the safety of the counter. Elena ignored him. She was watching the dog's breathing, the set of its shoulders, the way its weight was distributed. Reading the language written in muscle and stance. "You're hurt," she told the dog quietly. "And your handlers hurt worse. Let me help." The German Shepherd held her gaze for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then, with a decisiveness that suggested military discipline rather than domestication, it sat. Elena looked past it to the old man who'd sagged against the doorframe. "Sir, can you tell me where you're injured?" "Ribs," he managed, voice rougher than gravel. "Accident." Dog jumped, tried to shield. She stood slowly, hands still visible. "I'm going to check your vitals. The dog's going to let me. Aren't you, soldier?" The German Shepherd's ears pricked forward at the word. Confirmation. Elena moved past the dog, and it watched but didn't follow. She helped the old man to a wheelchair someone had abandoned near the entrance, her hands quick and professional as she checked his pulse, thready but present, and examined the spreading blood stain on his shirt. "Possible rib fracture, likely internal bleeding," she called over her shoulder. "We need a trauma bay." "We need that animal out of here," Webb shot back. "This is a hospital, not a—" "The dog is injured and in shock," Elena cut him off, something sharp entering her voice for the first time. "The handler is a trauma case. We treat both, or we're violating about 6 different protocols, including the ones about service animals." "That's not a service, military working dog," Elena said flatly. "Look at the vest under all that blood. Look at the tattoo in its ear. This isn't someone's pet." Sharon moved closer, tablet raised like a shield. "Elena, you can't just—" "Trauma Bay 2 is open," Elena said. "I'm taking him there. The dog comes with us, or you're going to have a much bigger problem when he goes into protective mode." She didn't wait for permission, just started wheeling the old man toward the trauma bay, moving with a confidence that suggested she'd done this before under much worse circumstances. The German Shepherd fell into step beside the wheelchair, limping but steady, blood leaving a trail on the linoleum. Behind them, Webb's voice rose. "Carter, if you move that patient without authorization, then fire me," Elena said, without turning around, "after I stop him from bleeding out." The trauma bay swallowed them, doors swinging shut on the chaos outside. Elena worked fast, got the old man onto the bed, cut away his shirt with trauma shears, revealed ribs that were definitely broken, and a bruise pattern that suggested internal trauma. She had IV access in 30 seconds, fluids running before anyone else even entered the room. The German Shepherd sat beside the bed, eyes tracking every movement, breathing hard through pain but maintaining position. "What's your name?" Elena asked the old man as she worked. "Thomas," he rasped. "Thomas Brennan. That's Riley." "Military?" His eyes found hers, suddenly sharp despite the pain. "How'd you—" "The dog told me," Elena said simply. She was examining Riley now, hands careful but thorough, checking the shrapnel wounds that peppered the animal's side. "These need cleaning and suturing. You were in an accident?" "Car ran the light," Thomas managed. "Hit us. Riley pushed me. Took most of the impact." Dr. Webb burst through the doors, Sharon right behind him. "Carter, step away from that patient. He's got at least 3 broken ribs and probable internal bleeding," Elena reported without moving. "Fluids are running. He needs imaging now, not in 20 minutes, while you stand around deciding whose authority matters more." Webb's face went red. You don't make that call. Someone had to. Elena was wrapping Riley's wounds now, hands steady. The dog has multiple lacerations and possible internal injuries. He needs a vet. This is a human hospital. Then get a vet here, or let me treat him. I've got field experience. Sharon's eyes narrowed. Field experience? Elena realized her mistake a half-second too late. The words had slipped out, reflex from another life. Webb seized on it. What field experience? You're a nurse, not a... He stopped, eyes widening with something between realization and fury. Did you lie on your application? No. Elena's voice stayed level. I have exactly the credentials I claimed. Everything I did tonight was within my scope of practice. You brought an animal into my trauma bay. Your trauma bay was empty, Elena shot back. Your patient was dying. The dog was the only reason he made it through those doors. And if you'd spent less time worrying about liability and more time doing your job, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes explosions. Sharon broke it, voice careful. Elena, maybe you should... I should finish treating my patient, Elena said. Then I should make sure Riley gets proper care. Then we can have whatever administrative discussion you want. Webb's voice dropped to something cold and precise. You're done, Carter. Not just with this shift. Done. Clean out your locker and get out. Elena's hands stilled on Riley's bandage. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Not surprise, exactly. More like resignation. The look of someone who'd known this was coming eventually and was almost relieved it had finally arrived. Fine. She finished securing the bandage, checked Thomas's IV one more time, and stepped back. He needs a CT scan within the next 10 minutes. The dog needs a veterinarian. If you let either of them suffer because you're more interested in punishing me than doing your job, that's on you. She stripped off her gloves, dropped them in the biohazard bin, and walked out of the trauma bay without looking back. The ER had gone quiet. That particular silence of people pretending they hadn't been listening while absorbing every word. Elena moved through it like walking through water, heading for the locker room. Sharon caught up with her in the hallway. Elena, wait. Don't. Elena kept walking. It's fine. It's not fine. Webb's an ass, but he's got connections with the board. If you want to fight this, I don't. Elena pushed open the locker room door. I knew what I was doing, knew what it would cost. Still worth it. Sharon followed her in, watching as Elena spun her locker combination with hands that didn't shake. The guy, Thomas, is he going to be okay? If Webb stops posturing and does his job, yeah, he'll be fine. Elena pulled out her jacket, her bag, the few personal items that marked 2 years of work in this place. The dog, too, with proper care. You could have let security handle it. Elena's laugh was quiet and devoid of humor. Security was about to get someone killed. The dog, probably. Maybe Thomas, too, if Riley panicked. I couldn't... She stopped, shook her head. Doesn't matter now. Where'd you learn to handle animals like that? The question hung in the air between them. Elena zipped her bag, closed her locker, finally met Sharon's eyes. Nowhere important, she said. Take care of them, please. Then she was gone, walking through the ER one last time, past the nurse's station where Dr. Webb was already on the phone, probably calling the board, covering himself, making sure the official story painted him as the hero and her as the liability. The automatic doors opened onto a night that smelled like rain and exhaust. Elena stood for a moment, breathing air that wasn't filtered through hospital ventilation, feeling something in her chest unclench. 2 years. 2 years of pretending to be just a nurse, just another face in scrubs, just someone who'd wandered into medicine through normal channels. And it had lasted right up until the moment something military walked through those doors. She started toward the parking lot, where her 12-year-old Honda waited in the section reserved for staff, who didn't matter enough for covered parking. The asphalt was slick with recent rain, reflecting streetlights and wavering pools. Behind her, in the trauma bay, Thomas Brennan was being wheeled toward imaging. Riley lay on the floor beside the empty bed, eyes tracking the doorway Elena had disappeared through, waiting for the one person who'd understood. And in the parking lot, 4 black SUVs with tinted windows glided silently toward the hospital entrance. moving with the kind of precision that suggested they'd done this before, many times, in places where precision was the difference between success and body bags. Elena was halfway to her car when she felt it, that old instinct, the one she'd tried to bury under night shifts and patient charts. The awareness of being watched, the weight of attention from people trained to observe without being observed. She stopped walking. The SUVs pulled up to the hospital entrance, doors opening in synchronized sequence. Men emerged, not moving fast, but not moving casually either. Efficient, purposeful. The kind of people who made decisions and expected them to be followed. Elena's hand found her car keys, but she didn't move toward the Honda. Instead, she turned slowly, watching the entrance, waiting. Inside the hospital, Sharon was updating Thomas's chart when the men walked in. They didn't stop at the desk, didn't ask permission, just moved with the kind of authority that suggested they already knew exactly where they were going. Dr. Webb looked up from his phone. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The lead man, older, gray hair cropped military short, bearing that suggested he'd spent decades making decisions other people had to live with, swept the ER with a glance that missed nothing. "Who treated the dog?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. It carried anyway. Webb straightened, attempting to reclaim authority. "I'm the attending physician. If this is about the incident—" "The dog," the man repeated, and something in his tone made it very clear he wasn't interested in whatever story Webb had prepared. "Military working dog, German Shepherd, injured in a vehicle accident approximately 37 minutes ago. Who made contact?" Sharon felt her stomach drop. "Sir, if you could just—" "Her name was Elena Carter," Webb cut in, regaining confidence now that he had someone to throw to the wolves. "She violated hospital protocol, brought an uncontrolled animal into a sterile environment, and was terminated immediately. If there's liability, where is she?" The man's eyes found Webb, and whatever the doctor saw there made him take a step back. She left. A few minutes ago." The man turned to one of his team. "Find her." "Sir?" Sharon started. He looked at her and she recognized something in his eyes. The same thing she'd glimpsed in Elena's face sometimes, in unguarded moments. The weight of things witnessed and decisions made in places where mistakes didn't just cost careers, they cost lives. "That dog," he said quietly, "is a decorated military asset with 3 combat deployments. His handler is a veteran of 2 wars, and whoever made contact without getting torn apart has skills that don't come from a civilian nursing program." He paused, letting that sink in. "So I'm going to ask one more time. Where is Elena Carter?" Sharon pointed toward the exit. "Parking lot, blue Honda." The man was already moving. Elena watched them come, and part of her, the part she'd tried to bury, recognized the pattern. Extraction team, priority recovery. Someone had made a phone call, and now the machinery was in motion. She could run, get in the Honda, drive away, disappear again the way she'd done before. New city, new name, new story. She'd gotten good at it. But she was tired. So tired. The lead man approached alone, letting his team maintain distance. Tactical courtesy. Not a threat, not yet. He stopped 15 feet away, hands visible. "Elena Carter?" he asked. "Used to be," she said quietly. His eyes narrowed. "Used to be?" "Depends on who's asking." He studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw made him relax slightly, some calculation resolving in his favor. "Admiral Daniel Hayes, U.S. Navy Medical Command. I need to ask you some questions." Elena's laugh was soft and brittle. "I'm sure you do." "You made contact with a military working dog in active distress. You used nonverbal calming protocols consistent with Special Operations medical training. You identified the handler's injuries and provided immediate stabilization." Hayes took a step closer. "Where'd you learn that?" "YouTube," Elena said flatly. "Try again." She met his eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, she didn't bother hiding what lived behind her own. "Does it matter? I got fired, the dog's stable, the handler's getting treated. We're done here." "You're not civilian trained," Hayes said. It wasn't a question. Elena said nothing. "I can pull records," he continued, "make calls. But that takes time, and I've got a veteran in there asking about the nurse who saved his dog's life. Asking why she knew exactly what to do. Asking questions that suggest he recognized your technique." So I'd rather hear it from you." Hayes's voice softened slightly. Off the record, one professional to another. The silence stretched. In the distance, a siren wailed. Somewhere in the hospital, someone was having the worst night of their life, and the machinery was grinding into motion to pull them back from the edge. Elena looked at the Honda, at the hospital, at the man who'd asked a question she'd been running from for years. I was a combat medic, she said finally. Special operations. Did 3 deployments, saw things that don't make it into recruitment videos. Got good at my job because the alternative was body bags. She paused. Then I came home and realized I didn't fit anymore. Couldn't stand the bureaucracy, couldn't handle the politics, couldn't watch people die because someone 3 levels up decided the budget mattered more than supplies. Another pause. So I left, found a civilian nursing program, got certified, started over, tried to be normal. So what? Until tonight. Until tonight, Elena agreed. When something walked through those doors that I actually understood. Hayes nodded slowly, processing. The dog trusted you. The dog recognized training, same way you did. And the handler? Is a soldier who needed help, so I helped him. Elena's voice stayed level. Is that a crime? No. Hayes glanced back at the hospital. But walking away might be. Elena's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means Thomas Brennan is asking for you. It means Riley's stable, but refusing to let anyone near him except the veterinary tech, and even she's nervous. It means you walked out of there like you expected to disappear, and I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen. I got fired. Webb's an idiot, Hayes cut her off, and he's about to have a very bad morning when my report hits his board. But that's not your concern. He took another step closer. Your concern is that you made contact with a military asset, demonstrated specialized knowledge, and then tried to vanish. That raises questions. Elena's hand tightened on her keys. I'm not going back. Not to this hospital, Hayes agreed, but there are other options. Not interested. In what? Doing the work you're actually trained for? Using skills that took years to develop? Or were you planning to spend another decade pretending to be something you're not? The words hit harder than Elena expected. She forced herself to breathe, to not react, to maintain the control that had kept her safe for 2 years. I left for a reason, she said quietly. I know. I read the file. Elena's blood went cold. What file? Hayes smiled, but there was no humor in it. The one that says Elena Carter, Special Operations Combat Medic, separated under circumstances that were classified above my pay grade. The one that says you were recommended for commendation 3 times and turned it down all 3. The one that says you treated 47 combat casualties with a 94% survival rate, which is statistically impossible, except you did it anyway. You had no right. I had every right. You made contact with military assets. That triggers protocols. He paused. But I'm not here to drag you back. I'm here because Thomas Brennan is inside that hospital asking why the nurse who saved his dog knew exactly what to do, and because Riley won't let anyone else near him, and because Webb is already spinning a story about liability and safety. That's going to make sure you never work in medicine again unless someone steps in. Elena stared at him. And that someone is you? Could be. Hayes pulled out a card, offered it. Or you can get in that Honda and drive away. Start over somewhere else. Keep running. The card hung in the air between them, white and official, and weighted with implications. Elena didn't take it. What do you want? Right now? I want you to come back inside. Talk to Thomas. Let him say thank you to the person who saved his life and his dog's life. Then we can discuss what happens next. And if I say no? Hayes pocketed the card. Then I tell him you were just doing your job and you had to leave. He'll be disappointed, but he'll understand. Riley will probably take longer to calm down, but we'll manage. And you'll drive away, and maybe in 6 months or a year, something else will walk through whatever doors you're working behind, and you'll have to make the same choice all over again. He turned to leave, then paused. One thing, though, that technique you used with Riley, the approach, the breathing, the body language, that's not something you learn in a weekend seminar. That's training from people who work with animals in combat zones. Which means someone thought you were worth investing in, thought you had the instinct and the discipline to handle situations where mistakes cost lives. He met her eyes one last time, Seems like a waste to spend the rest of your career hiding from that. Man's Swirish. Whoops. Then he walked back toward the hospital, leaving Elena standing in the parking lot with her keys in her hand and a choice burning in her chest. Inside, Thomas Brennan was being moved back from imaging, ribs wrapped, pain medication starting to kick in. Riley lay beside the bed, head on his paws, eyes tracking every movement in the hallway. Sharon approached carefully. "Mr. Brennan? The scans show fractures but no major internal damage. You got lucky." "Riley got lucky," Thomas corrected, voice rough. "Where's the nurse? The one who knew what to do?" Sharon hesitated. She had to leave. Had to or was forced to? Thomas's eyes were sharper than his voice suggested. "I heard the shouting, heard that doctor. She got fired for helping us, didn't she?" "Mr. Brennan." "That dog served 3 tours," Thomas cut her off. "Saved lives. Saved my life twice. And the only person in this whole damn building who understood that was her. So where is she?" Before Sharon could answer, Admiral Hayes walked back in, expression unreadable. Thomas saw him and tried to sit up, military instinct overriding pain. "Sir?" "At ease, soldier." Hayes's voice carried command without cruelty. "Your ribs are fractured. Not a suggestion. Lie down." Thomas settled back, but his eyes stayed alert. "Did you find her?" "I did." "And?" Hayes looked at Riley, who'd raised his head at the sound of footsteps. "We had a conversation." "Is she coming back?" "That's her decision." Thomas's jaw tightened. "She saved his life, mine too, probably, and they fired her for it." "I'm aware." "So what are you going to do about it?" Hayes smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "Everything I can. But first she needs to decide if she wants that." Outside, Elena stood in the parking lot for 3 more minutes, looked at the Honda, looked at the hospital, felt the weight of 2 years of pretending pressing against the weight of everything she'd been before. Then she locked her car and walked back toward the entrance. Sharon saw her first. "Elena!" But Elena was already moving past her, through the ER that had fired her 20 minutes ago, past Dr. Webb, who started to say something and then thought better of it when he saw her expression. She walked into Thomas Brennan's room and found him watching the doorway like he'd been expecting her. Riley's head came up, ears forward, and the tension in his body language shifted from alert to recognition. "Hey, soldier," Elena said quietly, kneeling beside the bed. Riley moved to her, careful of his injuries, and pressed his head against her shoulder. Thomas exhaled, something unclenching in his chest. "Thank you." Elena kept her hand on Riley's head, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. "For what?" "For seeing him. Not as a problem or a liability, as what he is." Thomas's voice roughened. "As a soldier who needed help." "Same as you." "Yeah." Thomas managed a smile that held more pain than humor. "Same as me." Admiral Hayes watched from the doorway, and when Elena finally stood and met his eyes, he nodded once. "We should talk," he said. "Yeah," Elena agreed. "We should." But before they could, the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, and then the building's emergency power system kicked in with a deep, resonant hum that made everyone in the ER look up. Outside, more vehicles were arriving. Not black SUVs this time, larger, heavier. Moving with purpose that suggested this wasn't a rescue anymore. It was something else entirely. The emergency power hummed through the walls like a warning, and Elena felt every instinct she'd buried for 2 years snap back into focus. Hayes's posture shifted, subtle, but she caught it. Military recognition. Whatever was coming wasn't a drill. "Stay with him," Hayes said, already moving toward the hallway. Elena didn't argue. She knelt beside Riley, one hand on his collar, feeling the tension in his muscles. The dog sensed it too, that change in atmospheric pressure that preceded action. Thomas tried to sit up again. "What's happening?" "Nothing good," Elena said quietly, eyes on the doorway. Through the ER windows, she could see them now. 3 large transport vehicles, dark green with minimal markings. Military, but not the polished SUVs from before. These were workhorses, the kind that carried equipment and personnel into situations where presentation didn't matter because everyone already knew what you were. Hayes met them at the entrance, his team flanking him. Elena couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read body language well enough. Tension. Authority. The kind of exchange where everyone was being professional while calculating exactly how much force they could apply before crossing a line. Sharon appeared in the doorway, face pale. Elena, there are more of them. They're saying something about a security breach. Where's Webb? Elena asked. In his office. On the phone with someone. He looks... Sharon stopped, searching for the word. Scared. Elena stood, mind working through scenarios. Military vehicles, security breach, Hayes' sudden appearance, the way he'd known her file existed, known details that should have been buried under enough classification to make them effectively invisible. Riley whined, low and uncertain. I know, Elena told him. I don't like it either. A man in uniform entered the ER, boots clicking on linoleum with parade ground precision. Not Hayes' age, younger, harder, the kind of officer who'd come up through combat commands rather than administrative tracks. His name tape read Morrison, and his eyes swept the room with tactical assessment. We need everyone cleared from this wing, Morrison announced. Medical personnel, patients, visitors, everyone out, now. Dr. Webb emerged from his office, trying to project authority that was already crumbling. Excuse me, you can't just... Yes, I can. Morrison's voice could have cut steel. This facility is temporarily under federal jurisdiction. You'll receive full documentation within the hour. Until then, you follow my orders or you get removed. Your choice. Webb's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Sharon found her voice. We have patients who will be relocated to other hospitals as needed. Priority cases first. Morrison's gaze found Elena held there. You, Carter, with me. Elena didn't move. Why? Because Admiral Hayes requested you, and because I don't have time to argue. He glanced at Thomas. The veteran stays, the dog stays. Everyone else goes. Hayes appeared behind Morrison, expression tight. Stand down, Major. She's not under your command. Neither are you. With respect, sir. My orders come from Northcom. This facility is compromised. The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Elena's mind raced. Compromised how? By what? And why did it involve her, Thomas, and a military working dog? What kind of compromise? She asked. Morrison's jaw tightened. Classified. Then I'm not going anywhere? Elena, Hayes started. No. No. She cut him off, something cold settling into her voice. I left that world. Left the clearances and the classified briefings and the need-to-know bullshit. I'm a civilian. You want me to follow orders, you give me a reason. Morrison took a step forward. The reason is national security. The reason is you're scared, Elena said flatly. Something happened. Something you didn't expect, and now you're here locking down a civilian hospital because you lost control of a situation. So either tell me what's actually going on, or get out of my way. The silence that followed was the kind where everyone in the room stopped breathing. Hayes broke it, voice quiet but carrying. She's right. Morrison turned on him. Sir, she's right, and you know it. If we're going to ask her to cooperate, she deserves to know why. Hayes looked at Elena. There was an incident 3 hours ago. A convoy transporting classified medical research was attacked. 2 soldiers killed, 3 wounded, and the payload was taken. Elena's stomach dropped. What kind of research? Biological. Experimental treatments derived from military medical protocols, including some developed during special operations deployments. He paused, letting that sink in. Your deployments. The world tilted slightly. You think I'm involved? Elena's voice came out steady despite the ice spreading through her chest. No. But someone knows you exist. Someone knows you were part of the team that developed those protocols, and someone leaked your location to parties we're still identifying. That's impossible. My records were sealed. Sealed isn't erased, Morrison cut in, and seals break when someone applies enough pressure in the right places. Thomas spoke from the bed, voice rough but clear. So you're using her as bait? Morrison didn't deny it. Elena looked at Hayes. Is that true? It's one option, Hayes said carefully, but not the only one. We can extract you. Put you somewhere safe until we identify the leak and shut it down. For how long? However long it takes. Months? Years? Elena laughed, bitter and sharp. I already did that once. Started over, built a new life, convinced myself I could be normal. And you're telling me it was all for nothing because someone decided my past was worth selling? I'm telling you that you have a choice, Hayes said. Run, or help us catch whoever's coming for you. Riley shifted, pressing against Elena's leg. The dog's instincts were firing, danger close, threat assessment unclear. Elena closed her eyes, just for a moment. Saw the faces of soldiers she'd treated in field hospitals that smelled like blood and diesel. Saw the ones who'd made it and the ones who hadn't. Saw the line between saving lives and losing them, and how thin it always was. When she opened her eyes, Morrison was watching her with something that might have been respect. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Hayes exhaled. "First, we secure this location. Then we move Thomas and Riley to a safe facility. Then we see who shows up looking for you. And if no one does, then we dig deeper, find the leak from the inside." Morrison's radio crackled. He listened, face going stone. "Sir, we have movement. 2 vehicles, civilian plates, approaching from the south access road. They're not stopping at the checkpoint." Hayes's hand went to his sidearm. "How far?" 90 seconds. The ER erupted into controlled chaos. Morrison's team moved with practiced efficiency, clearing sight lines, establishing defensive positions. Sharon and the other nurses were hustled toward the interior corridors, protests ignored. Elena stayed put. So did Thomas. So did Riley. "You should go," Thomas told her. "Not a chance." "This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is." Elena's voice was quiet but absolute. "Someone turned my past into a weapon. That makes it mine." Hayes positioned himself near the entrance, weapon drawn but lowered. "Elena, if this goes bad, I know." "Do you?" He met her eyes. "Because these people killed 2 soldiers to get what they wanted. They won't hesitate with you. Then we make sure they don't get the chance." The vehicle screeched into the ambulance bay, tires smoking. Not subtle, not professional, desperate or stupid, and Elena couldn't tell which. 4 men emerged, weapons visible but not raised, testing boundaries, seeing how far they could push before someone pushed back. Morrison's voice cut through the tension. "This is federal property. Put the weapons down and identify yourselves." The lead man, 30s, lean, moving with the controlled aggression of someone who'd spent time in violent places, smiled without humor. "We're looking for someone." "Not here." "Her name's Elena Carter, used to be military, used to work on things that could make us all very rich." He took a step forward, "And we know she's inside." Elena felt her pulse steady, dropping into that zone where fear became fuel. She moved to the doorway, hands visible, posture open. Hayes tried to block her, but she stepped around him. "I'm Elena Carter," she called out, "and you're about to make a very stupid mistake." The lead man's smile widened. "There she is. Here I am. Now tell me what you want before these nice soldiers decide you're more trouble than you're worth." "What we want is simple. You know things, protocols, formulas, the kind of medical research that's worth 8 figures to the right buyers, and you're going to tell us everything you know." Elena laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut. "You think I memorized classified research? You think I kept notes? I think you were on the team that developed breakthrough trauma treatments. I think those treatments are now sitting in a convoy we liberated. And I think you're the only person alive who can tell us exactly what we're dealing with." "Then you wasted your time and 2 soldiers' lives," Elena said. "Because I don't remember. It was years ago. I was following protocols, not writing them. Try again." The man raised his weapon slightly. "We know you were more than just a medic. We know you worked directly with the research team. We know you field-tested compounds that don't officially exist." Hayes tensed beside her. Morrison's team adjusted positions, angles of fire calculated and ready. Elena felt the weight of Riley pressing against her leg, felt Thomas's eyes on her back, felt the ghost of every soldier she'd treated hovering at the edge of her awareness. "You're right," she said quietly. "I did field test compounds, watched them work or fail on soldiers who trusted me to keep them alive. And you know what I learned?" "What?" "That some things shouldn't be remembered. Some knowledge isn't meant to survive." The man's expression hardened. "We can do this easy or hard, sweetheart. Your choice." "Don't call me sweetheart," Elena said, voice dropping to something cold and precise. "And if you're going to threaten me, at least have the guts to point that weapon at something other than the ground." His eyes narrowed. Behind him, his team shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going the way they'd planned. "Last chance," the man said. "Come with us voluntarily, or we take you. Either way, you're leaving." "Actually," Morrison said, stepping into view with his rifle shouldered and aimed, "she's staying, and you're under arrest for federal crimes, including murder, theft of military assets, and really piss-poor tactical planning." The man didn't lower his weapon. "You're outnumbered. Count again." More soldiers emerged from positions Elena hadn't even noticed. Rooftop, side entrance, vehicles that had arrived silent and dark. Morrison hadn't been securing the hospital. He'd been setting a trap. And these idiots had walked right into it. The lead man's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: anger, calculation, fear. "You can't." "I can," Morrison said flatly. "Drop the weapons, now." For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, the outcome hung in balance. Then one of the men lowered his weapon, then another. The lead man held out longest, jaw tight with fury, before finally letting his rifle clatter to the pavement. Morrison's team moved in, quick and professional, securing the prisoners with zip ties and practiced efficiency. Hayes exhaled beside Elena. "Well, that was too easy," Elena finished. "Way too easy." Morrison caught her tone. "What do you mean?" "I mean these guys were sloppy, loud, obvious, like they wanted to get caught." "Or they're not the real threat," Hayes said slowly, understanding dawning. "They're a distraction." Elena turned, already moving back toward Thomas's room. "How many entrances does this hospital have?" Sharon, still pressed against the wall with the other staff, spoke up. 6, not counting emergency exits." "And how many are you watching?" Morrison pulled out his radio. "All teams, sound off. Full perimeter check." The explosion came from the east wing. Not huge, but loud enough to rattle windows and send emergency alarms screaming into the night. Elena reached Thomas's room at a sprint, Riley already on his feet and snarling. Thomas was trying to get out of bed despite his ribs, face gray with pain. "Stay down," Elena ordered, checking the hallway. Smoke was beginning to drift through the ventilation system. "They're coming in the back." "How many?" Thomas managed. "Doesn't matter. We're moving. Now." She didn't wait for argument, just grabbed the wheelchair, helped Thomas into it despite his protests, and started pushing. Riley stayed close, moving like the trained operator he was, covering their retreat. Hayes caught up with them in the corridor. "Morrison's team is responding to the breach. We need to get you out." "No." Elena's mind was working 3 steps ahead, seeing patterns, calculating angles. "That's what they want. They blow the east wing. Everyone rushes that direction. We run into their real team waiting at the exits. So what do you suggest?" "We go up." Hayes blinked. "Up?" "Roof access. Helipad. You've got air support, right?" "About 12 minutes out." "Then we buy 12 minutes." She changed direction, heading for the stairwell. Hayes moved to help with the wheelchair, and together they lifted Thomas's chair up the stairs, one landing at a time. Riley bounded ahead, checking corners with military precision. Behind them, gunfire erupted, short, controlled bursts, professional. Morrison's team engaging with someone who actually knew what they were doing. "How many deployments did you say Thomas had?" Elena asked, breathing hard as they climbed. 2, Hayes answered. "Why?" "Because Riley's moving like he's done urban combat, and Thomas isn't panicking, which means we've all been here before," Thomas finished grimly. They reached the roof access. Elena tried the door, locked. Hayes kicked it once, hard, and the frame splintered. The night air hit them like cold water, wind whipping across the helipad. The city spread out below, lights blinking with casual indifference to the violence happening in their midst. "Now what?" Hayes asked. Elena scanned the roofline, the access points, the angles of approach. "Now we make ourselves very hard to kill for the next—" She checked her watch. 10 minutes. Riley growled, low and focused. His attention was fixed on the roof access door they'd just come through. Someone was coming up behind them. Elena moved Thomas's wheelchair to the far side of the helipad, behind the concrete housing for the elevator shaft. Cover. Not much, but better than nothing. Hayes positioned himself at the door, weapon ready. "How many, boy?" Riley's growl intensified. "More than one," Elena translated. She looked around, found a fire extinguisher mounted to the wall, pulled it free. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The door crashed open. Two men, armed, scanning with professional efficiency. They saw Hayes immediately, adjusted aim. Elena hit the first one with the fire extinguisher, a overhead swing that caught him on the shoulder and sent him stumbling. Hayes took the second with 2 shots, center mass, the sound deafening in the open air. The first man recovered fast, swinging his weapon toward Elena. She ducked, rolled, came up inside his guard and drove her knee into his ribs. He grunted, tried to grapple. Riley hit him from the side, 80 pounds of trained aggression, and the man went down screaming. "Off!" Elena commanded, and Riley released immediately, returning to her side. Hayes was already checking the fallen men. "Clear." "For now," Elena said, breathing hard, "but they'll send more." "How many do you think there are?" "Enough to hit a military convoy and win. Enough to plan a coordinated assault on a hospital. Enough—" She stopped. "Where's Morrison?" As if in answer, Morrison's voice crackled over Hayes's radio. "Admiral, we've got casualties. They're armed with military-grade weapons and they know what they're doing. We need that air support now." 8 minutes, Hayes responded. "Can you hold?" "Do we have a choice?" "No." The radio went silent. Elena looked at Thomas, who'd managed to stay conscious despite the pain. "You okay?" "I've had worse." He glanced at Riley. "He saved your life." "I know." She touched the dog's head, felt him lean into her hand. "Good boy." The sound of rotor blades began building in the distance. Relief washed through Elena's chest. They'd made it. 8 minutes had become 6, and support was inbound. Then she saw the laser sight paint Hayes's chest. "Down!" she screamed, tackling the Admiral sideways as the shot cracked past where his head had been. They hit the roof hard, Hayes swearing, Elena already rolling, trying to locate the shooter. Another shot, then another, coming from the next building over, maybe 200 meters away. "Sniper," Hayes said unnecessarily, pressing himself flat. Elena dragged Thomas's wheelchair further behind cover, Riley staying low and protective. "Can your people see him?" "Morrison's team is pinned inside. We're on our own until that helo arrives." Another shot spanged off the concrete inches from Elena's position. The shooter was good, professional, taking his time, adjusting for wind, waiting for one of them to make a mistake. Elena's mind raced. They were trapped on a roof with limited cover, taking fire from a trained marksman, with hostile forces somewhere in the building below them. The helicopter was still minutes out, and the longer they waited, the more time the enemy had to position additional assets. "We need to move," she said. "Where?" Hayes asked. "We're 40 feet up." Elena looked at the edge of the roof, then at the building next door. 10 feet of empty air separated them, maybe 12. "You're insane," Hayes said, reading her expression. "You have a better idea?" Another shot. This one close enough that Elena felt the displacement of air as it passed. Thomas spoke up, voice tight with pain. "She's right. We stay here. We're dead. Jump. Maybe we make it." "Maybe isn't good enough," Hayes protested. "It's what we've got." Elena was already moving, positioning Thomas's wheelchair near the edge, calculating angles and momentum. Riley watched, tense but trusting. "On 3, she said. "We run. We jump. We land on the next building's roof and pray it holds our weight." "And Thomas?" "Comes with us." Elena looked at the veteran. "You remember how to do a combat roll with fractured ribs?" Thomas managed something between a grimace and a grin. "Been a while. It's like riding a bike." She helped him stand slowly, supporting his weight. "Except the bike is on fire and someone's shooting at you." "So, a normal Tuesday in Kandahar." Hayes stood, keeping low, checking his weapon. "This is the worst plan I've ever heard." "Yeah," Elena agreed, "but it's ours. The helicopter came in faster than expected, rotors thundering, spotlight slashing across the roof. The sniper took a shot at it, missed, adjusted. 2. Elena and Thomas ran, Hayes beside them, Riley sprinting ahead. The edge rushed up, empty air yawning, the next building looking impossibly far away. 3. They jumped. For one perfect moment, Elena felt weightless, suspended between buildings, between choices, between the person she'd been and the person she'd tried to become. Then gravity remembered them. They hit the next roof hard, Thomas crying out, Hayes rolling to absorb impact, Elena's ankle twisting on landing. Riley made it look easy, landing and immediately spinning to check their back trail. The helicopter swung around, door gunner laying down suppressing fire toward the sniper's position. Morrison's voice crackled over the radio again. Admiral, we have them contained. Repeat, hostiles are contained. Casualties on both sides, but situation is stabilizing. Hayes lay on his back, breathing hard. I'm getting too old for this. Elena helped Thomas into a sitting position, checking his ribs. Still intact somehow. The man was built from spare parts and stubbornness. That was insane, Thomas said. Yeah. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. We're still on a roof with a sniper somewhere in range, and the building they'd just left exploded. Not the whole structure, just the top floor where they'd been standing 30 seconds ago. A massive fireball rolled into the sky, debris raining down, the shockwave hitting them like a physical force. Elena threw herself over Thomas, shielding him from falling fragments. Hayes covered them both with his body. Riley pressed against their side. When the dust cleared, the helicopter was hovering closer, crew chief gesturing urgently. A cable descended, harness attached. Ladies first, Hayes said, helping Elena up. Not a chance. She pushed Thomas toward the cable. He goes, Riley goes, then you, then me. Elena, that's the order, Admiral. Follow it or explain to your superiors why you left a combat veteran and a military working dog on a burning roof. Hayes's expression said he wanted to argue, but military discipline won. They got Thomas secured, then Riley. The dog fought it until Elena gave the command, then went still and let them lift him. Hayes was halfway up when the sniper took another shot. It caught Elena in the shoulder, spinning her sideways, pain white hot and consuming. She went down hard, vision tunneling. Above, Hayes was screaming something. The helicopter crew chief was lowering the cable again. Riley was going insane in the aircraft, snarling and fighting his restraints. Elena tried to stand, managed to get to her knees. Her shoulder was on fire, blood soaking through her scrubs, but the bone wasn't shattered. Through and through, probably. Clean wound. The cable reached her. She grabbed it one-handed, felt herself being lifted. The roof fell away beneath her, smoke and chaos in the ruins of what had been Mercy General's top floor. Below, emergency vehicles were converging, lights painting the night in red and blue. Strong hands pulled her into the helicopter. A medic was already working on her shoulder, cutting away fabric, applying pressure. Elena let them, too tired to do anything else. Hayes's face appeared in her field of vision. You're okay. You're going to be okay. I know. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Thomas? Safe. Riley's safe. Everyone's safe because of you. Elena closed her eyes, opened them again when Riley's cold nose pressed against her cheek. The dog had broken free from his restraints and was lying beside her, pressed against her good side. Good boy, she whispered. The helicopter banked, heading away from the hospital, away from the chaos, away from the life she'd tried to build and the one she'd left behind. But as the adrenaline faded and shock began creeping in, Elena realized something that made her blood run colder than the wound in her shoulder. They'd won this fight, captured the obvious attackers, survived the ambush. But someone had known exactly where she was. Someone had planned a coordinated assault on a civilian hospital. Someone had access to classified information about her past. And somewhere out there, that someone was watching the news coverage of the attack, seeing her face as she was loaded into a military helicopter, confirming that Elena Carter wasn't just alive. She was valuable enough to protect with military assets. Which meant this wasn't over. It had barely started. Hayes saw her expression change. What is it? We made a mistake, Elena said quietly. A big one. What mistake? She looked at him, at Thomas, at Riley pressed against her side, at the soldiers in the helicopter who'd risked everything to pull them out. We showed them I'm worth fighting for, Elena said, which means they're not going to stop. They're going to come harder, smarter, and next time they won't be satisfied with just information. What will they want? Elena's hand found Riley's collar, holding on like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. They'll want me. The helicopter touched down at Fort Harrison 43 minutes later, landing on a pad surrounded by chain link and armed sentries who looked like they'd shoot first and file paperwork later. Elena's shoulder had gone from screaming agony to a dull throb that suggested the medic knew what he was doing with field dressings. She could still move her fingers, still feel the pulse in her wrist. Good enough. Thomas was already being wheeled toward a medical facility, protesting the whole way. Riley fought the leash until Elena touched his head, and then the dog went quiet but tense, watching everything. Hayes helped her down from the aircraft, his grip firm on her good arm. Medical first, debriefing second. No arguments. Wasn't planning on any. The base was locked down tight. Lights everywhere, patrols moving in pairs, the kind of security posture that said someone important had made a phone call and used words like credible threat and immediate action. They moved through corridors that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, past rooms where people in uniform looked up and then quickly away, trained not to see things that weren't their business. The medical bay was cleaner than Mercy General, better equipped, staffed by people who'd treated gunshot wounds in places where morphine was a luxury. A doctor, 50s, gray at the temples, hands steady as bedrock, examined Elena's shoulder with efficient silence. Through and through, he confirmed. Missed the bone, missed major vessels. You're lucky. Don't feel lucky. Never do. He irrigated the wound, and Elena bit down on nothing while pain tried to turn her vision white. Gonna hurt like hell for a few weeks. No heavy lifting, no sudden movements. I'll prescribe something for the pain, but you look like the type who won't take it. You'd be right. He sutured both entry and exit wounds with precise stitches that would leave scars but wouldn't tear. When he finished, he stepped back and really looked at her for the first time. You did good tonight, he said quietly. Saved lives. That matters. Elena didn't answer. Couldn't, really, because her throat had gone tight with something she didn't have a name for. Hayes was waiting when she emerged, arm in a sling that made her feel like a broken toy someone had tried to fix with duct tape. Morrison wants to talk. Of course he does. They found Morrison in a conference room that had probably hosted 1,000 briefings about operations that would never make the news. He stood when they entered, face carved from stone, exhaustion showing in the set of his shoulders. Sit, he said, and it wasn't a suggestion. Elena sat. Hayes remained standing, positioned between her and Morrison, like he wasn't quite sure who needed protecting from whom. Morrison placed a tablet on the table, turned it so Elena could see. Security footage from Mercy General. Timestamp from 6 hours earlier, showing the parking lot, the ambulance bay, the loading dock. We pulled this after the attack, Morrison said. Watch. The footage showed a sedan, nothing special, gray, forgettable, pulling into a space near the employee entrance. A man got out, mid-40s, wearing scrubs that looked authentic enough. He swiped a badge at the door, walked inside like he belonged there. Who is he? Elena asked. That's what we're trying to figure out. Badge was cloned from a doctor who's been on vacation for 2 weeks. Scrubs are real, stolen from a uniform service 3 months ago. The car's a rental, paid for with a credit card tied to a shell company that doesn't exist anymore. Morrison swiped to another image. Same man, different camera, inside the hospital, walking through corridors, checking rooms, stopping outside Thomas's door for a full 30 seconds before moving on. He was looking for something, Hayes said. Or someone, Morrison corrected. He looked at Elena. He spent 40 minutes inside, accessed 2 computers using stolen login credentials, downloaded patient records, staff schedules, security camera locations. Then he walked out and disappeared. What did he take? Elena's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Morrison pulled up a list. Elena's employment file, her shift schedules, her home address, the apartment she'd lived in for 2 years, the one she'd thought was anonymous enough to be safe. Medical records from her hiring physical that included vaccination history, blood type, fingerprints from her background check. Everything someone would need to build a profile, Elena said quietly. Figure out my patterns, my routines, where I'd be vulnerable. He planted surveillance too. Found 3 devices, one in the break room, one in the parking lot, one in the corridor outside the ER. Voice activated, cloud uploaded. We're tracking the data stream, but whoever set this up knows how to cover their tracks. Hayes swore quietly. How long were they watching? At least 3 weeks, maybe longer. Morrison closed the tablet, which means they knew about Thomas before he ever walked through those doors. Knew about Riley, knew exactly when and how to hit us. Elena's mind was working through implications, seeing patterns emerge from chaos. The accident. Thomas's accident. Was it really an accident? Morrison and Hayes exchanged a look that told her everything she needed to know. "We're investigating," Morrison said carefully, "but preliminary evidence suggests the vehicle that hit Thomas ran the light deliberately. Driver abandoned the car 2 blocks away. We found accelerant residue in the interior. Someone was planning to torch it, but didn't have time." "So they tried to kill him?" "Tried to injure him," Hayes corrected. "Get him into a hospital where you worked. Create a situation that would force you to reveal your training. And when I did, they'd have confirmation. Not just that you existed, but that you were willing to break rules, take risks, expose yourself to help someone in need." Hayes's voice was grim. "They played you, played all of us." Elena felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. "Thomas, is he safe?" "He's in a secure ward with Riley. 3 guards, camera coverage, the whole 9 yards. Nobody's getting to him." "What about his family?" Morrison hesitated just long enough for Elena to know the answer was bad. "He's got a daughter. Sarah Brennan lives in Portland. We reached out 3 hours ago to offer protective custody. She refused." "Why?" "Said her father had been paranoid about government conspiracies for years, and she wasn't going to feed into it. Said if we had real evidence of a threat, show her. Otherwise, leave her alone." Morrison's jaw tightened. "We're watching her house anyway, discreetly. But she made it clear that if she sees federal agents, she's calling a lawyer and the press." Elena stood, ignoring the spike of pain from her shoulder. "I need to talk to her." "That's not—" "She'll listen to me. Another nurse, someone who saved her father's life. Not a uniform, not an authority figure, just someone who gives a damn." Elena met Morrison's eyes. "You said they're coming for me. Fine. Let them. But we don't let them use Thomas's family to do it." Hayes stepped forward. "Elena, if you leave this base, then they'll know where I am. Which is what you want, isn't it? Bait in a trap, just like before. Except this time I'm the one setting the terms." Morrison studied her, calculation visible in his expression. "What do you have in mind?" "I go to Portland, talk to Sarah Brennan, convince her to accept protection. And while I'm doing that, your people follow me, watch for anyone watching me, and we see who's interested enough to show their face." "That's insane. That's tactics," Elena shot back. "You want to catch these people? Stop reacting and start dictating. Make them come to us on our terms, our ground, our timeline. And if they decide to just shoot you from 600 meters away, then you'll have a body to autopsy and maybe some forensic evidence. Either way, you'll know more than you do now." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Hayes looked like he wanted to argue. Morrison looked like he was actually considering it, and Elena felt the familiar weight of making decisions that might get people killed. Finally, Morrison spoke. "You'd need a team, close protection, overwatch, technical support. And you'd need to sell it, make it look real enough that they take the bait, but not so obvious they smell the trap." "I can do that." "Can you?" Morrison leaned forward. "Because these aren't amateurs we're dealing with. They hit a military convoy, killed trained soldiers, and planned a coordinated assault on a hardened target. They're not going to fall for a simple provocation." Elena thought about the men at the hospital, the ones who'd been obvious, theatrical, designed to draw attention. Then she thought about the sniper who'd put a round through her shoulder from 200 meters in darkness and wind. "The team at the hospital was disposable," she said slowly. "Noise, distraction. The real operators are the ones we didn't see, the ones who planted surveillance, cloned badges, orchestrated everything from a distance. So they're not going to come at me directly. They're going to probe, test, see how we react, look for patterns in our response. And when they think they've found a weakness, they'll strike," Hayes finished. Elena nodded. "Which means we give them a weakness, something that looks like a mistake but is actually a kill zone." Morrison pulled out his phone, started making calls. Elena heard fragments, Portland detail, civilian transport, full surveillance package, and knew the machinery was already grinding into motion. Hayes waited until Morrison stepped out of the room before speaking. "You don't have to do this." "Yeah, I do." "Why?" "Because you feel responsible?" "Because Webb fired you and now you've got something to prove?" Elena looked at him, really looked, and saw genuine concern beneath the military bearing. I do this because 2 soldiers died protecting research I helped develop. Because Thomas almost died bringing Riley to someone he thought could help. Because someone out there thinks my past is worth killing for, and I'm not going to hide while other people pay the price for my choices. You already paid, Hayes said quietly. 3 deployments, combat trauma. Watching people die despite your best efforts. You earned the right to walk away. And I did walk away. Spent 2 years pretending I was someone else. But pretending doesn't change what's real. She touched her shoulder, felt the ache of fresh stitches. I was a soldier once. Maybe I still am. And soldiers don't get to choose when the fight comes to them. They only get to choose how they meet it. Hayes nodded slowly, accepting. Then let's make sure you meet it on your terms. 4 hours later, Elena was in civilian clothes. Jeans, jacket covering her shoulder holster, hair down and loose in a way that made her look softer than she felt. The gun was Hayes's idea, a compact 9mm with hollow points that would stop a threat without punching through walls and hitting bystanders. She'd checked it twice, cleared it, loaded it, racked around, and tried not to think about the last time she'd carried a weapon with serious intent. The team Morrison assigned was good. 2 close protection agents who moved like they'd done executive security in places where attacks were expected, not feared. A surveillance van that looked like a plumber's work truck. Overwatch positioned on buildings along the route to Sarah Brennan's house. Technical support monitoring communications, ready to jam signals or trace sources. Riley came with her, non-negotiable, according to Thomas, who'd regained enough strength to be loudly opinionated about his dog's welfare. He trusts you, Thomas had said, voice rough from pain medication. And right now, trust is the only thing we've got. So Riley sat in the passenger seat of the unmarked sedan, watching the road with military focus, while Elena drove north on I-5 toward Portland and a conversation she had no idea how to start. Sarah Brennan's house was in a quiet neighborhood where people mowed their lawns and knew their neighbors' names. 2-story craftsman, probably built in the 50s, with a vegetable garden that suggested someone cared about what they ate and where it came from. Normal. The kind of place where federal agents showing up would be the talk of the street for months. Elena parked 3 houses down, giving the Overwatch team time to confirm the perimeter was clear. Her earpiece crackled with voices reporting positions, sight lines, heat signatures. All clear. Ready? Hayes' voice came through, monitoring from the surveillance van. No, but I'm going anyway. She got out, Riley at her side, and walked up the driveway like she belonged there. The front door opened before she reached it, and a woman in her early 30s stepped out, dark hair pulled back, eyes that held Thomas's same sharp assessment, body language that said she was 3 seconds from calling the police. Sarah Brennan? Elena asked. Who's asking? My name's Elena Carter. I'm the nurse who treated your father last night after his accident. Sarah's expression flickered. Surprise? Suspicion? Confusion. The one who got fired? That's me. And you brought his dog? Sarah looked at Riley, who sat calmly, waiting. The people who called said he was in protective custody. He is, but your father asked me to bring Riley here. Thought maybe you'd listen to someone who isn't wearing a uniform or flashing credentials. Listen to what? Elena took a breath, feeling the weight of her shoulder holster, the ache in her stitched wounds, the eyes of the protection team watching from concealment. Can we talk inside? Please. Sarah studied her for 10 seconds that felt like 10 years, then stepped back and opened the door wider. 5 minutes. The house smelled like coffee and fresh paint. Photos on the walls showed Thomas younger, healthier, standing with Sarah at various ages. Graduation, wedding, holding a baby. A life built around being a father after being a soldier. Sarah didn't offer Elena a seat, just stood in the living room with her arms crossed, waiting. Your father's in danger, Elena said simply, and so are you. From who? People who want information about classified military research. People who already killed 2 soldiers and attacked a hospital to get it. And what does that have to do with me? Your father was a veteran, served with distinction, made connections, knew people, saw things that certain parties would rather stay buried. And Elena paused, choosing words carefully. I worked on some of that research, which makes both of us targets. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You're a nurse. I was other things before I was a nurse. Like what? Elena met her gaze. Like someone who knows that the people coming after your father won't stop at him. They'll use leverage, family, friends, anyone close enough to matter. And right now, your leverage. You're saying they'd come after me to get to him? I'm saying they already tried to kill him once and made it look like an accident. I'm saying they hit a military facility and planned it well enough to almost succeed. I'm saying these aren't criminals looking for a payday. They're operators with resources and training and zero hesitation about collateral damage. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car drove past slowly. Elena's hand drifted toward her weapon before she caught the motion, forced herself to relax. If this is real, Sarah said slowly, why didn't those federal agents tell me? Why send a nurse instead of someone with actual authority? Because someone with authority scares you, makes you defensive, triggers all your instincts about government overreach and conspiracy theories. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. Your father didn't trust easily. Sounds like you don't either. So I'm not here to scare you or order you around. I'm here to ask you, one person to another, to accept help before you need it. Riley chose that moment to stand, move closer to Sarah, and sit again at her feet. The dog looked up at her with eyes that held intelligence and assessment and something that might have been recognition. Sarah looked down, and her expression cracked slightly. He looks like my dad's old dog, the one he had when I was a kid. Before... She stopped, swallowed, before things got complicated. Riley saved your father's life twice, Elena said quietly. And your father loves him enough to worry about his safety, even when he's lying in a hospital bed with broken ribs. That's not paranoia. That's love. Sarah's hand reached down, hesitant, and touched Riley's head. The dog leaned into the contact, patient and steady. What would protection look like? Sarah asked. A team watching your house, monitoring communications, making sure nobody gets close without us knowing, and if necessary, moving you to a secure location until the threat is neutralized. For how long? However long it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Sarah was silent, processing. Elena could see the calculation happening, weighing risks, measuring trust, trying to decide if this was real or some elaborate manipulation. Then Riley whined, soft and urgent, and every instinct Elena had developed over 3 deployments started screaming. Get down, she said, already moving, pulling Sarah toward the floor as glass exploded from the window and something small and metallic bounced across the hardwood. Flashbang. Elena had half a second to recognize it before the world became noise and light and confusion. She covered Sarah with her body, felt Riley press against them both, heard Hayes screaming in her earpiece. Then silence rushed back in, broken only by ringing ears and the sound of boots hitting pavement outside. Elena forced herself up, weapon drawn, scanning through watering eyes. The front door was open, kicked in, hanging from one hinge. Figures moving fast, tactical formation, weapons raised. She put herself between them and Sarah, Riley snarling beside her, and squeezed the trigger twice as the first figure entered. Center mass. The man went down hard, body armor catching the rounds, but hydrostatic shock putting him on the floor. Elena shifted aim to the second figure, fired again, saw the shot go wide as her shoulder protested, and her vision swam. Then Hayes was there, coming through the back door with his own weapon, and the protection team was flooding in through the shattered front entrance, and the house became a tactical nightmare of overlapping fire and shouted commands. Elena kept her weapon trained on the downed men, kept herself between Sarah and any potential threat, kept breathing despite the adrenaline trying to turn her blood into rocket fuel. Morrison's voice cut through the chaos, broadcast from somewhere. Secure. All hostiles down. Medical en route. Hayes moved to Elena's side, checked her over with quick efficiency. You're hit. What? He pointed to her side, where blood was soaking through her jacket. Elena looked down, felt the pain catch up with her awareness, realized one of the rounds had clipped her ribs. Not deep, a graze maybe, but bleeding and going to hurt like hell once the shock wore off. I'm fine, she said automatically. You're not. Sarah Brennan sat on the floor where Elena had pushed her, staring at the bodies being zip-tied and searched, at the blood on Elena's clothes, at Riley standing guard with teeth bared. What? She started, then stopped, unable to finish. Elena holstered her weapon, moved to Sarah's side despite the pain, kept her voice calm. You're safe. It's over. Those men are in custody. They're not going to hurt you. They tried to... Sarah's voice broke. They were going to... But they didn't. Because we were here. Because you let me in. Elena touched Sarah's shoulder gently. I know this is terrifying. I know it doesn't make sense. But you're alive. And that's what matters. Hayes appeared with a trauma kit, started working on Elena's side without asking permission. She let him, too tired to argue, watching as Morrison supervised the prisoner extraction and evidence collection. One of the downed men was conscious, glaring at Elena with fury that suggested this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Morrison crouched beside him, voice cold and precise. You're going to tell me who sent you. The man said nothing. You're going to tell me who's running this operation. Still nothing. Morrison leaned closer. Or I'm going to charge you with attempted murder of a federal witness, assault on a federal agent, and about 12 other felonies that will put you in a hole so deep you'll forget what sunlight looks like. Your choice. The man smiled, and something about that expression made Elena's blood run cold. You think this was about her? He said, nodding toward Elena. You think grabbing one burned-out medic matters in the scheme of things? Then what was it about? The man's smile widened, proving we can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime we want. Your protection means nothing. Your security theater is a joke. And when we're ready, he looked directly at Elena. When we're ready, we'll take what we came for, and there's not a damn thing you can do to stop us. Morrison hit him, once hard enough to snap the man's head sideways. Get him out of here. As the prisoners were dragged away, Elena felt Sarah's hand find hers, gripping tight despite the trembling. My father, Sarah whispered. He's safe, Elena assured her, though the man's words echoed in her head like a warning bell. I promise. But even as she said it, her earpiece crackled to life with a voice she didn't recognize, urgent and sharp with fear. All units, we have a breach at Fort Harrison. Repeat, we have a breach. Secure medical ward is under attack. Multiple hostiles. Casualties reported. Elena's heart stopped. Thomas. The helicopter ride back to Fort Harrison took 38 minutes that felt like 38 hours. Elena sat strapped in, pressure bandaged tight around her ribs. Sarah Brennan beside her looking like she'd aged a decade in the last hour. Riley pressed against Elena's leg, tension radiating from every muscle. Hayes was on 3 different radio channels simultaneously, coordinating response, demanding updates, his voice carrying the kind of controlled fury that came from watching a situation spiral beyond acceptable parameters. How bad? Elena asked when he finally paused. Hayes's expression told her everything before he spoke. 4 guards down, 2 dead, 2 critical. The attackers breached through the loading dock, used stolen credentials, and knew exactly which route had the weakest coverage. By the time the alarm went up, they were already inside the secure ward. Thomas, alive, barricaded himself in the bathroom with a fire extinguisher and refused to come out until Morrison personally confirmed the area was clear. Hayes almost smiled. Stubborn old bastard. Sarah's hand found Elena's, gripping hard. My father fought them? Your father's a soldier, Hayes said simply. They don't stop being soldiers just because they retire. The base was on full lockdown when they landed. Checkpoints every 50 meters, armed patrols, the kind of security posture that said someone's career was already over and they were just waiting to find out whose. Morrison met them at the pad, face carved from granite. Carter, with me. Now. Elena followed him into a conference room that had been converted into a command center. Screens showed security footage from the attack, tactical overlays, prisoner interrogation feeds. A dozen personnel worked stations with focused intensity. Morrison pointed to one screen. Watch. The footage showed the loading dock at 0347 hours. A delivery truck pulling in, driver presenting credentials. Gate opening. Normal. Then the truck's rear doors opened and 8 men emerged in tactical gear, moving with military precision. They had a 4-minute window before the next patrol cycle, Morrison said. Used it to neutralize the exterior guards, breach the building, and reach the secure ward. Professional, coordinated. Someone gave them our patrol schedules, security protocols, and Thomas's exact location. Elena's stomach dropped. Inside job. Has to be. These people knew too much, moved too fast, and they were willing to die to complete the mission. 2 of them triggered suicide devices when capture became inevitable. What about the others? Morrison pulled up another screen. Interrogation room. A man strapped to a chair, face bloody, eyes defiant. This one's talking, not much, but enough. He pressed play. The audio was tinny, but clear. Who sent you? Morrison's voice, cold as winter. The prisoner spat blood. Someone who pays better than you do. Name. Don't know, don't care. Got a target list? Got resources? Got authorization to use lethal force? That's all the information I needed. The research you're after. What's it worth to them? The man laughed, wet and painful. More than your life, more than mine, more than any of this matters. Morrison stopped the playback. He's been saying variations of that for 2 hours. Won't give names, won't identify his employers, won't admit anything that could be used in court. But he did say one thing that's useful. What? That they already have what they need, that tonight was just cleanup. Elena felt ice spread through her chest. Cleanup of what? Of witnesses. Of anyone who could identify what was taken from that convoy. Morrison met her eyes. They're not after the research anymore. They're eliminating everyone who knows it exists. Hayes entered the room, moving fast. We've got a problem, bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Dr. Marcus Webb disappeared 3 hours ago. Left Mercy General during the chaos, got in his car, drove away. We put out a bolo, tracked his phone to a rest stop outside the city, found the car abandoned with the phone inside. Elena's mind was already connecting pieces. Webb knew I worked there, knew my schedule, had access to personnel records. And he was on duty when Thomas arrived, Hayes continued. Was in the room when you demonstrated your training, saw exactly how you handled Riley. He's the leak. Morrison pulled up Webb's file. Medical degree from a decent school, 15 years at Mercy General, unremarkable career trajectory. But there, buried in his financial records, were deposits. Small enough to avoid automatic flagging, large enough to add up. 20,000 here, 30,000 there, spread across 18 months. He was selling information, Elena said. Patient data, employee records, anything worth money. And when someone asked about former military personnel working in civilian medicine, he had the perfect answer. Morrison's voice was grim. You. Sarah spoke up from the doorway, where she'd been quietly listening. So this is all because some doctor wanted extra cash? It's more than that, Elena said. The research thereafter, it's worth millions, maybe billions if weaponized correctly. Webb probably thought he was just selling routine information. Didn't realize he was identifying a target. Hayes pulled out his phone, made a call. I want Webb's background checked. Everything. Military service, family connections, known associates. Someone's running him, and I want to know who. 20 minutes later, they had an answer. Webb's brother-in-law, a man named Ronald Vickers, who'd done 2 tours in Army intelligence before being quietly discharged for reasons that were still classified. Now worked as a security consultant for private military contractors. The kind of contractors who operated in gray zones where laws were suggestions and deniability was currency. Get me Vickers, Morrison ordered. Now. But Vickers was already gone. His apartment cleared out, bank accounts emptied, phone disconnected. Professional disappearance, the kind that took planning and resources. Elena stared at the screens, feeling pieces slide into place. They're running. Who? Everyone involved. Webb, Vickers, whoever hired them. They got what they wanted, or they think they did. Now they're cleaning up loose ends and vanishing before we can trace the chain upward. Morrison's jaw tightened. We still don't know what they took. The convoy was carrying multiple research projects. Could be any of them. No. Elena's voice was quiet, but certain. It's the trauma compound, the one we field tested in Syria. Hayes looked at her sharply. How do you know? Because that's the only one that was actually finished. The only one that worked consistently. Everything else was experimental, unreliable. But the trauma compound, she stopped, memory flooding back. We tested it on 47 casualties. 44 survived wounds that should have been fatal, and the other 3 died because we ran out of doses, not because the compound failed. What does it do? Elena's hands clenched. It's a synthetic blood substitute combined with clotting factors and cellular regeneration stimulants. Buys you time. Massive trauma, Catastrophic blood loss, organs failing, inject the compound directly into the bloodstream, and you get 30 minutes of stable vitals, sometimes more, long enough to get someone to a surgical unit. That's worth killing for, Morrison said quietly. That's worth starting wars over, Elena corrected. Imagine a combat unit where soldiers can survive injuries that would normally kill them, where evacuation timelines don't matter because the wounded stay stable indefinitely, where a medic with a syringe can do what used to require a hospital. Sarah's voice was small. And my father knows about this? Your father was there when we tested it, saw it work, saw what it could do. Elena looked at her. That's why they went after him. Not because he has the formula, he doesn't, but because he can confirm it exists, can testify to its effectiveness, can ruin the story they're trying to tell about what was stolen. Hayes was already moving. If they're cleaning up witnesses, Thomas isn't safe. Neither is Elena. Neither is anyone who was present during those field tests. Morrison pulled up another list: names, dates, status indicators. Of the 17 personnel involved in the Syria operation, 9 are deceased. 4 died in combat, 3 in accidents over the past 2 years, 2 in the convoy attack last week. Elena's blood went cold. Show me the accident reports. Morrison hesitated, then pulled up files. A car crash in heavy rain. A house fire with faulty wiring. A hiking accident in terrain the victim had traversed 100 times before. Those aren't accidents, Elena said. Those are assassinations made to look like accidents. Can you prove it? Can you afford not to assume I'm right? Morrison and Hayes exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind that came from years of working in environments where mistakes cost lives. We need to move Thomas, Hayes said. Somewhere they can't find him, somewhere off the books. And Elena? Elena stays visible, stays in play, because right now she's the only bait we have that might draw out whoever's running this operation. Elena nodded, expecting this. What about Sarah? Protective custody, real protective custody, not the half measure we tried before. Sarah started to protest, but Elena cut her off. Your father almost died tonight protecting you. Don't make his sacrifice meaningless by refusing to stay safe. The words hit hard. Sarah's expression crumbled slightly, then firmed. Fine, but I want updates, every hour. And if anything happens to him, it won't, Morrison said. We'll make sure of it. 2 hours later, Thomas was being moved under armed escort to a location that Morrison wouldn't even tell Elena about. She stood in the corridor as they wheeled him past, his hand reaching out to catch hers. Don't do anything stupid, he said, voice rough. Too late for that. I mean it. These people, they're not like the ones we fought overseas. They don't have rules, don't have lines they won't cross. I know. Thomas held her gaze. Riley trusts you. That means something. Dogs know things people miss. I'll keep him safe. Keep yourself safe. He'll follow. Then he was gone, disappearing into a transport vehicle with tinted windows and heavily armed guards. Sarah went with him, still looking back at Elena like she was trying to memorize someone she might never see again. Riley whined, low and uncertain, and Elena touched his head. I know, boy. I don't like it either. Hayes found her in the corridor 20 minutes later. Morrison wants you in protective custody too. Secure facility, limited access, constant surveillance. No. Elena, they're running, which means they're scared, which means we're close to something they don't want us to find. You lock me away. You lose the only leverage you have. Hayes' jaw tightened. You're wounded, exhausted, and they've tried to kill you twice in 24 hours. How much more proof do you need that this is bigger than you? It's not bigger than me. Elena's voice was steady. It's mine. My research, my past, my choice to leave and try to pretend none of it mattered. I don't get to hide now just because it's convenient. This isn't about convenience. It's about keeping you alive long enough to testify. Testify about what? We still don't know who's running this, don't know where the research went, don't know what they're planning to do with it. Elena met his eyes. But I know someone who might. Who? The person who trained me, the one who developed the trauma compound in the first place. Elena paused. Dr. Lillian Park. She was the lead researcher on the project. If anyone knows what that compound can do and who'd want it, it's her. Hayes pulled out his phone, started searching. His expression changed. Park retired from military research 4 years ago, moved to private practice, runs a medical consulting firm out of Seattle. Get me to Seattle. Elena? Get me to Seattle, or I go myself. Your choice. Hayes stared at her for 5 seconds, then nodded. Decision made. I'm coming with you, and we're bringing enough security to start a small war. Fine. And you're wearing body armor. Fine. And if at any point I say we're leaving, we're leaving. No arguments. Elena smiled, tired and grim. You're learning. They flew out 3 hours later on a military transport that had been diverted from another mission. Elena sat in the cargo bay, Riley pressed against her side, body armor uncomfortable over her bandaged wounds. The painkillers they'd given her were wearing off, leaving raw edges that made breathing an adventure in discomfort. Hayes sat across from her, checking equipment with mechanical efficiency. Park knows you're coming, agreed to meet, but she sounded nervous. She should be. If we're right about the pattern, she's on the list too. We offered protection. She refused. Elena wasn't surprised. Park had always been prickly about authority, fiercely independent, the kind of brilliant that didn't play well with bureaucracy. She'd fought military oversight at every turn, pushed boundaries, demanded resources and autonomy in equal measure. And she'd taught Elena everything about trauma medicine that couldn't be found in textbooks. Seattle appeared through the cargo door, gray and wet and sprawling. They landed at a private airfield where unmarked vehicles waited, engines running. The drive to Park's office took 40 minutes through traffic that suggested everyone in the city had decided to drive slowly and badly at the same time. Park's building was downtown, nondescript, the kind of place that housed accounting firms and insurance agencies and consulting businesses that nobody could quite explain. Her office was on the 7th floor, accessed through a lobby with decent security and a receptionist who barely looked up. Hayes' team secured the floor while Elena and Hayes took the elevator. The doors opened on a corridor that smelled like coffee and printer toner and decades of fluorescent lighting. Park's door was unlocked. Hayes put a hand on his weapon. Stay behind me. They entered together, clearing corners, checking sight lines. The office was empty, desk covered in papers, computer running, coffee still warm in its mug. But no Park. She was here recently, Elena said, touching the coffee cup. Within the last 30 minutes. Hayes keyed his radio. Perimeter check. Subject may have left the building. Copy. Checking exits. Elena looked around the office, seeing patterns and chaos. Papers spread in deliberate arrangement, not random scatter. Computer screen showing a document. Research notes, formulas, annotations in Park's precise handwriting. She left this for us, Elena said quietly. Hayes moved closer, reading over her shoulder. What is it? The trauma compound. Complete formula. Synthesis protocols, field test results. Elena's breath caught. And a note. The note was handwritten, Park's distinctive scrawl barely legible. Elena, if you're reading this, they found me. Should have accepted protection. Stubborn until the end. The compound works better than we reported. Side effects we didn't document. Enhanced healing, improved immune response, something close to regeneration in some subjects. That's what they're really after. Not a trauma treatment. An enhancement, a way to make better soldiers. I couldn't let that happen. Destroyed the primary samples 3 years ago. The convoy was carrying decoys, saline and glucose, with just enough active ingredient to test positive but not enough to replicate. They stole nothing, but they don't know that yet. When they figure it out, they'll come for the only remaining source. My blood. I'm type O negative universal donor, and I tested the compound on myself 67 times. My system is saturated with it. I'm the formula now. Find me before they do, or make sure they never get the chance to use me. LP. Elena's hands shook. How long ago did she write this? Hayes checked the computer's timestamp. 14 minutes. They're here, in the building. As if on cue, Hayes' radio crackled. We've got movement, stairwell, multiple contacts, moving fast. Gunfire erupted. Close. Maybe 2 floors down. Hayes grabbed Elena. Back door. Now. They ran through Park's office, Riley at their heels, heading for the emergency exit. The stairwell door burst open as they reached it, and Hayes fired twice, putting down a man in tactical gear who'd been moving fast and confident. Go! Hayes pushed Elena through, followed, slammed the door, and wedged it with a fire extinguisher. They descended stairs 3 at a time, Riley bounding ahead, hearing more gunfire above and below. The building had become a war zone, and they were trapped in the middle. Second floor. Hayes's radio was chaos, his team engaging multiple hostiles, taking casualties, calling for backup. Elena's mind raced through options, discarding the ones that ended with everyone dead. "The parking garage," she said. "Street level. We can get to the vehicles." An explosion above shook the stairwell. Debris rained down, dust and smoke filling the air. They hit the ground floor, burst through the door into the parking garage. Hayes's team had fought through, 2 vehicles burning, bodies scattered, the survivors forming a defensive perimeter. "Get in!" someone shouted. Elena ran, Riley beside her, Hayes providing covering fire. They dove into a vehicle, doors slamming, tires screaming as the driver floored it. Bullets sparked off armored panels. Something heavy hit the rear window, crazing the bulletproof glass but not penetrating. Then they were out, hitting street level, merging into traffic that scattered at the sight of armed men and smoking vehicles. Hayes was on his radio, demanding backup, medical support, tactical teams to secure Park's building. Elena sat in the back seat, holding Riley, mind working through implications. Park was gone, either captured or running. The formula existed not in a lab, but in a person's bloodstream. And whoever was behind this now knew that trying to steal research was pointless when they could just take the researcher. "We need to find her," Elena said. "We will. Before they extract what's in her blood and reverse engineer it." Hayes's expression was grim. "We're trying. Trying isn't enough." Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena stared at it, instinct screaming warning. Hayes saw her expression. "Don't answer." She answered. "Put it on speaker." Dr. Lillian Park's voice came through, strained but controlled. "Elena, good. You got my note. Where are you? Doesn't matter. What matters is I need you to listen very carefully. They have me, and they're going to try to extract the compound from my system. It'll kill me. The concentration in my blood is too high. Removing it rapidly will cause catastrophic organ failure, but they don't care about that. We'll find you. No. You'll stop them. There's a kill switch built into the compound. Temperature sensitivity. If my core temperature drops below 32 degrees Celsius for more than 90 seconds, the compound breaks down into inert proteins, becomes useless. I designed it that way precisely to prevent what's happening now." Elena's mind raced. "How do we trigger it?" "You don't. I do, when the time comes, but I need you to promise me something." "What?" "That you'll make sure they pay. Every person involved. Every person who thought they could turn my work into a weapon. Promise me, Elena. Promise they won't walk away from this." "I promise." "Good." Park's voice softened slightly. "You were my best student. The only one who understood that medicine isn't about the science, it's about the choice. Save or harm, heal or destroy. You always chose right." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, hearing Park's words echo. Then she looked at Hayes. "They're going to kill her," Elena said quietly. "Either in the extraction or after. And when they do, the compound dies with her. Unless they figure out the temperature sensitivity. They won't, not in time. Park built that failsafe precisely because she knew someone would try this eventually." Elena's hands clenched. "But they'll torture her trying. They'll hurt her trying to find alternatives. And she'll let them because she's buying us time." "Time for what?" "To find who's running this operation. To trace the money, the resources, the authority needed to coordinate everything we've seen. To identify the person giving orders and make sure they face consequences." Hayes pulled out his tablet, started working. "Morrison's team is already on it. Financial forensics, signal intelligence, interrogating the prisoners. But these people are ghosts, shell companies, cutouts, encrypted communications. Every lead ends in a dead end." Elena watched the city pass outside, thinking. Patterns. There were always patterns. Webb had leaked information. Vickers had provided operational support. The attackers had military training and high-end equipment. Someone with serious resources was coordinating. "Who benefits?" she asked. "What?" "From having this compound. Not just having it, but having it exclusively. Who profits from controlling technology that could revolutionize combat medicine? Hayes's expression changed. Understanding dawning. Military contractors, private security firms, anyone who provides medical support to armed forces, and anyone who wants to bid on government contracts for next-generation trauma care. Elena met his eyes. Morrison said the convoy was carrying multiple research projects. What if this was never about stealing them? What if it was about making sure they never reached the bidding stage? Corporate sabotage, warfare, fought with bribes and assassinations instead of bullets. Eliminate the competition, secure the market, charge whatever you want because you're the only option. Hayes was already making calls, redirecting Morrison's investigation. We need financial records, every company that bid on military medical contracts in the last 5 years. Cross-reference with Vickers' employment history, Webb's bank deposits, the equipment used in the attacks. Elena's phone rang again. Different number. She answered without thinking. A voice she didn't recognize. Male, middle-aged, carrying the kind of authority that came from boardrooms instead of battlefields. Ms. Carter, we need to talk. Who is this? Someone who can make this stop. The attacks, the investigations, all of it. I can make it go away. In exchange for what? Your silence. Dr. Park's silence. A mutual agreement that certain technologies remain unavailable to public development. Elena's grip tightened on the phone. You're the one running this. I'm the one trying to prevent a disaster. That compound, you know what it can do. You've seen it. Imagine it in the wrong hands, terrorist organizations, rogue states, anyone willing to pay. The chaos it could unleash. So you kill people to prevent chaos? I prevent chaos by controlling the technology, by making sure it stays in responsible hands, hands that understand its implications. Your hands. Hands that won't sell to the highest bidder, yes. The voice stayed calm, reasonable. I'm offering you a way out, Ms. Carter. Take it. Walk away. Live your life. We'll release Dr. Park unharmed. Cease all operations, and you never hear from us again. Elena looked at Hayes, who was frantically trying to trace the call. She needed to keep this person talking. And if I refuse? Then Dr. Park dies. Slowly, painfully. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you could have saved her with one word. Show me proof she's alive. A pause. Then Park's voice, strained and frightened. Elena, don't! The line cut. Elena's breath came hard and fast. Hayes's tablet showed the trace, bouncing through servers, impossible to pin down precisely, but narrowing to a geographic area. Industrial district, abandoned warehouses, somewhere people could scream and nobody would hear. We've got a location, Hayes said. Rough, but close enough. Morrison's sending tactical teams. How long? 20 minutes, maybe less. Elena looked at the phone in her hand, at Riley, pressed against her side, at the city outside that didn't know it was hosting a war. 20 minutes. Park had maybe 30 before they killed her trying to extract what lived in her blood. Elena made a decision. Get me there, she said. Now. We don't wait for backup. Elena, that's insane. That's tactics. They're expecting military response, heavy presence, overwhelming force. They're not expecting 2 people and a dog to walk in the front door. Hayes stared at her. You want to surrender? I want to get close enough to finish this. Elena's voice was steady. They offered me a deal. Let's see if they're willing to negotiate in person. They'll kill you. Maybe, or maybe they actually believe their own story about preventing chaos and keeping technology controlled. Maybe they think they're heroes. Elena met his eyes. Either way, we end this tonight. Park lives or dies. We catch these people or they vanish forever, but we don't get another chance. Hayes was quiet for 10 seconds. Then he told the driver to change course. The warehouse district loomed ahead, dark and industrial, and perfect for things that needed to stay hidden. Elena checked her weapon one more time. Riley pressed against her leg and wondered if Park's promise about choosing right would hold true when the choice became life or death for everyone involved. The phone rang a third time. Elena answered. Smart choice, Ms. Carter. Come to the address I'm sending, alone. We'll talk. The address appeared. A warehouse 3 blocks from their current location. I'm bringing Admiral Hayes. No military personnel. Hayes or nobody. Your choice. A pause. Calculation happening. Fine, but he comes unarmed. Deal. Elena hung up, looked at Hayes. You heard him. I'm not giving up my weapon. Yes, you are. Because if you're armed, they won't let us close, and we need to be close to end this. Hayes swore quietly, but started unloading his sidearm, removing the magazine, clearing the chamber. This is the worst plan in the history of plans. Yeah, Elena agreed, but it's ours. They pulled up to the warehouse 5 minutes later. No guards visible, no obvious security, just a door and darkness beyond. Elena got out, Riley at her side, Hayes behind her. Her shoulder ached, her ribs screamed. Her mind was crystal clear with the kind of focus that came from knowing the next 10 minutes would define everything. She walked to the door, knocked once. It opened. And on the other side stood Dr. Marcus Webb, holding a gun and smiling like he'd just won something precious. Webb's smile was the kind that didn't reach his eyes, the expression of someone who'd spent years pretending to care about patients while mentally calculating what their suffering could buy him. He gestured with the gun, casual and confident. Elena, Admiral, come in. We've been waiting. Riley's hackles went up, a low growl building in his chest. Elena's hand found his collar, held firm. Easy. The warehouse interior was exactly what she'd expected. Concrete floors, metal rafters, enough shadows to hide an army. But what caught her attention was the setup in the center. Medical equipment, IV stands, a chair with restraints, and sitting in that chair, wrists bound, was Dr. Lillian Park. Park looked up as Elena entered, and something complicated flickered across her face. Relief, fear, resignation. You shouldn't have come, Park said, voice hoarse. Couldn't let you have all the fun. Elena kept her tone light despite the ice in her veins. Webb moved to Park's side, gun never wavering from Elena. Touching reunion, but we're on a timeline here. Dr. Park has been less than cooperative about explaining the compound's extraction process. Because there isn't one, Park said flatly. I told you, it's integrated into my cellular structure. You can't extract it without killing me. We'll see about that. Webb nodded to someone Elena couldn't see yet, and a figure emerged from the shadows. The man was 50s, expensive suit, the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms and golf clubs. His hands were soft, manicured, probably hadn't held anything heavier than a pen in decades. But his eyes were cold with the particular ruthlessness of people who dealt in billions and measured human lives in quarterly reports. Ms. Carter, he said, voice smooth as expensive whiskey. I'm James Holloway, CEO of Arcturus Medical Solutions. We provide combat medicine support to 70% of U.S. military operations worldwide. Elena recognized the name. Arcturus was one of the biggest private military contractors in existence. Billions in government contracts. Facilities in 40 countries. The kind of company that made wars profitable. You're the one who ordered the convoy attack, Elena said. I'm the one who prevented a catastrophic market disruption, Holloway corrected. That convoy was carrying research that would have been licensed to multiple competitors. Diluted the market, reduced profitability, bad for business. 2 soldiers died. Casualties happen in our line of work. I'm sure you understand. Holloway's smile was pleasant, practiced. But we're not here to debate ethics. We're here to make a deal. Hayes shifted beside Elena. What kind of deal? Simple. Dr. Parks tells us how to synthesize the compound. Ms. Carter confirms the information is accurate based on her field experience. In exchange, everyone walks away. Dr. Park gets to retire comfortably. Ms. Carter returns to her quiet civilian life. And we forget this unfortunate misunderstanding ever happened. And if we refuse? Elena asked, though she already knew. Holloway's expression didn't change. Then Dr. Park dies badly. You die badly. Admiral Hayes dies badly. And we take what we need from Dr. Park's corpse. The compound may degrade post-mortem, but we'll have enough tissue samples to reverse engineer the basics. It'll take longer, cost more, but we'll get there eventually. You're insane, Hayes said. I'm pragmatic. There's a difference. Holloway glanced at Webb. Show them we're serious. Webb moved behind Park's chair, pressed the gun against the base of her skull. Park's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. Elena's mind raced through options, discarding the ones that ended with Park's brain matter on the floor. She needed time. Needed Morrison's tactical team to arrive. needed anything other than watching her mentor die because corporate greed valued patents over people. The compound doesn't work the way you think, Elena said quickly. Holloway raised an eyebrow. Explain. The field tests. We reported 44 survivors out of 47 casualties. But we didn't report the complications, the side effects that showed up weeks later. This was a lie, a complete fabrication. But Elena sold it with the confidence of someone who'd seen things that would make normal people vomit. Park caught on immediately. Neurological damage in 60% of survivors. Tremors, cognitive decline, personality changes. We buried it because the military needed a win, but the compound isn't ready for deployment. Holloway's expression shifted slightly. Calculation. Doubt. You're lying. Am I? Check the medical records from the Syria deployment. Cross-reference with VA disability claims filed in the 18 months following. You'll see the pattern. Elena kept her voice steady. You steal this technology, rush it to market, and 12 months from now you're facing lawsuits from every soldier who took it. Class actions, congressional investigations. Your company gets destroyed along with your reputation. It was beautiful watching Holloway's certainty crack. He pulled out his phone, started making calls. Elena could hear fragments, verify the claims data, Syria deployment medical, disability filings. Webb looked uncertain now. Sir, we've come too far to... Shut up. Holloway was focused on his phone, on whatever his people were telling him. Elena caught Park's eye, mouthed 2 words, kill switch. Park's expression showed understanding. She closed her eyes, and Elena saw her chest movements change. Deliberate hyperventilation, forcing her core temperature down through controlled breathing and vascular dilation. The biological equivalent of triggering a self-destruct sequence. Holloway ended his call, face dark. There's no pattern, no disability spike, no neurological damage. Then you didn't look hard enough, Elena said. No, you're stalling. Holloway's voice went cold. Webb, shoot her. Webb swung his gun toward Elena. Riley lunged 80 pounds of trained aggression, hitting Webb's arm as he fired. The shot went wide, sparking off concrete, and Webb went down screaming as Riley's jaws found his wrist. Hayes moved fast, tackling Holloway, driving him into the medical equipment with a crash of metal and shattering glass. Elena ran to Park, working at the restraints with shaking hands. How long? 2 minutes. Maybe less. Park's lips were going blue, skin pale, core temperature plummeting as the compound in her bloodstream began breaking down. Get out, both of you. When this goes, it's going to be bad. Not leaving you. Elena, not leaving you. The restraints came free. Elena helped Park stand, supporting her weight as the older woman's legs buckled. Webb was on the floor, Riley standing over him, blood pooling from the ruined wrist. Hayes had Holloway pinned, the CEO's face pressed against concrete. Then the door burst open and Morrison's tactical team flooded in, weapons raised, voices overlapping in commands. Clear! Hands where we can see them! Medical needed! Elena lowered Park to the ground carefully, keeping her conscious through sheer force of will. A medic appeared, started checking vitals, face going pale at the readings. Her temperature's 89 degrees. She's hypothermic. We need warming blankets, heated saline. No. Park's hand caught the medic's arm. Let it finish. The compound needs to degrade completely, or this never ends. You could die. I know. Park's eyes found Elena's. Worth it, though, to know they don't win. Elena held her mentor's hand while medical personnel worked frantically, while Morrison supervised the arrest of Holloway and Webb, while Hayes gave a statement to someone with a camera and official credentials. Park's temperature bottomed out at 86 degrees. Her heart rate dropped to 40. Her breathing became shallow and thready. Then slowly, impossibly, she started coming back. Temperature climbing degree by degree, heart rate strengthening. The human body's survival mechanisms kicking in once the threat had passed. The medic looked shocked. I've never seen anyone recover from that level of hypothermia without intensive intervention. She's tougher than she looks, Elena said quietly. Park managed a weak smile. Learned from the best. Morrison appeared, helping Elena to her feet. We got them. All of them. Holloway's talking already. Trying to cut a deal, throw everyone else under the bus. Webb's lawyered up, but the evidence is overwhelming, and we traced the financial network, shell companies, offshore accounts, the whole structure. It's going to take years to unravel, but we've got the beginning of the thread. What about the research, the convoy, decoys? Just like Park said, the real samples were destroyed 3 years ago. Everything they stole was worthless. Morrison's expression held something like respect. She planned this, knew someone would eventually come after her work, set up the perfect trap. Elena looked at Park, who was being loaded onto a stretcher despite her protests. She always was smarter than everyone else. Not everyone. Park's voice was weak but clear. I learned from you too, you know. The thing about choosing right, even when it costs everything. I just applied it to chemistry instead of combat medicine. They took Park away, Hayes following to coordinate with federal prosecutors who were apparently salivating at the chance to take down a defense contractor CEO. Morrison stayed with Elena, watching as evidence was collected and prisoners were processed. You did good work tonight, Morrison said. People still died. Yeah, they did, but a lot more would have died if Holloway had gotten what he wanted, if that compound had hit the black market, if people like him had been able to weaponize research meant to save lives. Morrison paused. Sometimes winning isn't clean. It's just less bad than losing. Elena thought about Thomas, safe somewhere with his daughter. About Riley, pressed against her leg, loyal and steady. About 2 years spent pretending to be someone she wasn't because being herself had cost too much. What happens now? She asked. Now? Federal investigation, congressional hearings, media circus. Your name's going to be all over it. The nurse who exposed corporate corruption, saved her mentor, brought down a multi-billion-dollar conspiracy. Morrison's tone was dry. You're going to be famous, in the worst possible way. Fantastic. Or, Morrison handed her a card, different from Hayes's, heavier stock, embossed lettering. You could disappear again. New identity, new city, new life. We owe you that much. Elena stared at the card, then at the warehouse, the chaos, the aftermath of choices made in seconds that would echo for years. I'm tired of disappearing, she said quietly. Then what? Then I do what I should have done 2 years ago. I stop pretending the past doesn't matter and start using it for something that does. She met Morrison's eyes. You said there were other people from the Syria deployment, other witnesses who might be targets. Yeah, we're working on protective details. I want to help, not as bait, not as a witness, as someone who knows how these operations work, who can identify patterns, spot threats, keep people alive while you hunt down everyone involved. Morrison studied her. That's a full-time job. I'm unemployed, my schedule's flexible. It's dangerous. I'm a combat medic who just walked into a hostage situation with a dog and an unarmed admiral. I'm familiar with dangerous. Morrison almost smiled. Hayes is going to love this. Hayes will deal with it. The card disappeared into Morrison's pocket. He pulled out a different one. Official credentials, contact information, the kind of thing that opened doors and made bureaucrats nervous. Welcome to the team, Carter. Don't make me regret this. No promises. 3 days later, Elena sat in a hospital room at Fort Harrison, watching Thomas try to convince the doctors he was healthy enough to leave despite ribs that were still healing, and a daughter who kept threatening to sedate him if he didn't follow medical advice. Riley lay on the floor between them, content in a way he hadn't been since the accident. Sarah sat by her father's bed, holding his hand, looking at Elena with gratitude mixed with something that might have been understanding. You're really doing this? Thomas asked. Working with Morrison's task force? Looks like it. They'll work you to death. Probably. And you'll still do it anyway because you're stubborn and damaged and can't help trying to save everyone. Elena smiled. You know me so well. Thomas's expression sobered. Thank you for everything, for saving Riley, for saving me, for saving my daughter when I couldn't. You saved yourself. I just made sure you had the chance. Still, Thomas glanced at Sarah. We're going to Portland, soon as the doctors clear me. Get away from all this for a while. Try to be normal. Good. You've earned normal, Sarah spoke up, voice quiet. What about you? What have you earned? Elena thought about that. About Webb being prosecuted for conspiracy and murder. About Holloway facing life in prison and the collapse of his company's stock price. About Park recovering in a private facility, already planning her next research project with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested hypothermia was just a minor setback. About 2 years spent pretending to be invisible, and one night that had proven invisibility was just another kind of prison. I've earned the right to stop hiding, Elena said, to be who I actually am instead of who I thought I needed to be. To use the skills I spent years developing for something other than trying to forget I had them. Thomas nodded slowly. That's good. That's really good. Hayes found her in the corridor an hour later. Park wants to see you. They drove to the facility where Park was being kept. Not quite a hospital, not quite a safe house. Something in between that catered to people whose medical needs came with security clearances. Park was sitting up in bed, color returned to her face, arguing with a nutritionist about protein requirements. She saw Elena and waved off her visitor with imperious dismissal. You look better, Elena said. I feel like I got hit by a truck, but I'm alive. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. That kill switch was brilliant. Park's smile was sharp. I have my moments. Speaking of which, she pulled out a tablet, showed Elena a document. I'm starting a new research initiative, trauma medicine without the weaponization potential. Open source protocols, peer-reviewed everything, no military funding. I need someone who understands field applications. Someone who won't let me disappear into theory and forget about practical implementation. You want me to work with you? Part-time, when you're not busy with Morrison's team. I've cleared it with the Admiral. He thinks it's a good idea to keep me from accidentally creating something else that defense contractors will kill for. Elena read through the proposal. Bleeding control protocols, shock management, infection prevention in austere environments, all the unglamorous, essential work that saved lives without headlines or patents. Why me? Elena asked. Because you know the cost. Not just in research hours or funding, but in human terms. You've held people together with nothing but field dressings and determination. You understand that medicine isn't about the breakthrough. It's about the person on the ground bleeding out while someone tries to remember their training. Park's voice softened. And because you didn't let me die when it would have been easier, that kind of stubborn optimism is useful. Elena felt something warm and unfamiliar settle in her chest. Purpose. Not the kind that came from running away or hiding or pretending to be someone else. The kind that came from knowing exactly who you were and choosing to use that for something beyond survival. Okay, she said. I'm in. Good. Now get out. I need to argue with this nutritionist about the digestibility of her protein shake recommendations. Elena left Park to her battles and found Hayes waiting outside, leaning against his car with the kind of patience that suggested he'd been there a while. So, he said, civilian consultant for Morrison's task force, research partner with Park. What's next? Running for Congress? Let's not get crazy. You say that now. Give it 6 months. Hayes opened the car door for her. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Staying visible, using your skills, not letting Webb and his kind win by forcing you back into hiding. It's not about them, Elena said. It's about me. About being honest for the first time in years about what I'm good at and what I actually want. Which is to help people, the way I was trained to, the way I chose to before everything got complicated. She looked at him. Is that enough? Is it okay to just want something simple after everything that's happened? Hayes smiled, genuine and warm. Simple's good. Simple's what we're all looking for under the complicated. The drive back to Fort Harrison was quiet, comfortable. Elena watched the city pass outside and thought about the last 72 hours. About how quickly everything had changed, about how one decision to help a wounded veteran and his dog had unraveled a life she'd spent 2 years building and revealed the one she'd been avoiding. Her phone buzzed, text from Morrison. First assignment, interview subject in protective custody. Subject's refusing to cooperate with anyone except the nurse who saved his dog. Your move. Elena smiled. Thomas. Of course, she replied. On my way. 2 weeks later, Elena stood in front of a Senate subcommittee investigating defense contractor corruption. The chamber was packed with journalists, advocates, military personnel, and citizens who'd driven hours just to watch someone finally hold powerful people accountable. Senator Patricia Keene leaned forward, glasses reflecting camera flashes. Ms. Carter, you've given testimony about the attack on Mercy General Hospital, the conspiracy to steal classified research, and the role of Arcturus Medical Solutions in coordinating these crimes. But I'd like to ask you something more personal. Elena waited, knowing this was coming. You were a decorated combat medic who left military service and spent 2 years working in civilian medicine under circumstances that some might call hiding. What made you step forward? What made you decide to fight back? Elena thought about that question, about the real answer versus the one that would play well on camera. She chose honesty. I didn't decide to fight back, Senator. I just decided to stop pretending. For 2 years, I told myself that if I was quiet enough, invisible enough, my past wouldn't matter. That I could be normal if I just worked hard and kept my head down. But normal isn't about hiding who you are. It's about accepting it, using it, choosing every day to be the person you actually are, instead of the one you think you should be. Keene nodded slowly. And who are you, Ms. Carter? I'm someone who was trained to save lives in the worst possible circumstances, who saw combat and came home changed but not broken, who made mistakes and learned from them and decided that making new mistakes was better than repeating old ones. Elena paused. I'm a medic. That's what I've always been. The only thing that changed was my willingness to admit it. The chamber was silent. Then Keene spoke again, voice carrying to every corner. Thank you for your service, Ms. Carter, both the service you gave in uniform and the service you're giving now. The hearing continued for 3 more hours. Elena answered questions about Holloway, Webb, the conspiracy, the research. She kept her answers precise, factual, devastating. By the time she walked out, Arcturus's stock had dropped another 40%, and 3 more executives had resigned pending investigation. Morrison was waiting in the hallway. You did good in there. I told the truth, that's all. Sometimes that's the most powerful weapon you have. He handed her a folder. New assignment. 3 more personnel from the Syria deployment have received threats. We need protective details, threat assessments, and someone to coordinate with local law enforcement. Think you can handle it? Elena took the folder. When do I start? You already did. 6 months later, Elena sat in a coffee shop near Fort Harrison, laptop open, working through her latest report for Morrison while simultaneously reviewing research protocols Park had sent over. Her shoulder had healed to a dull ache that only bothered her when the weather changed. Her ribs were fine. She'd even started sleeping through the night again. Riley dozed at her feet, officially retired from military service and unofficially Elena's constant companion. Thomas had insisted, saying the dog had chosen her, and arguing with a military working dog's choice was a waste of everyone's time. Her phone rang. Unknown number, but she answered anyway. Part of the job now. Elena Carter. Ms. Carter, my name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a trauma nurse at Portland General. I just saw your interview on CNN about corporate accountability in defense medicine. And the woman paused. I think something similar is happening here. Medical research being stolen, personnel being threatened. I don't know who to trust, but I thought maybe you would understand. Elena closed her laptop, signaling the waitress for her check. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Because that's what she did now. She listened. She helped. She used every skill she'd ever learned, military and civilian, combat and compassionate, to make sure people who needed protection got it, and people who deserved consequences faced them. She wasn't hiding anymore. Wasn't pretending. Wasn't trying to be someone else's idea of normal. She was Elena Carter, combat medic, federal consultant, research partner, the woman who'd been fired for doing the right thing and proved that sometimes the right thing was the only thing worth doing. Riley woke as she stood, stretched, and fell into step beside her. Together they walked out into a world that was still dangerous, still complicated, still full of people like Webb and Holloway who thought power meant immunity. But it was also full of people like Thomas and Sarah and Park, like Hayes and Morrison, like the nurse from Portland who'd called because she believed someone would listen. And Elena was done pretending those people didn't matter, done hiding from who she'd always been, done letting anyone tell her that caring too much or fighting too hard or refusing to look away was somehow wrong. She'd been invisible once, background noise in scrubs who took the worst shifts without complaint. Not anymore. Now she was exactly who she'd always been. A soldier who'd traded a uniform for different battles and discovered that the fight for what's right didn't end when you left the battlefield. It just found new ground. And Elena Carter was done running from that fight. She was ready to win it. The truth about power isn't who has it, it's who's willing to use it for something beyond themselves. Elena had spent 2 years believing that invisibility was safety, that hiding was survival, that being forgotten was the price of peace. She'd been wrong. Real safety came from refusing to be silent, Real survival came from standing visible, and real peace came from knowing that when the choice arrived between comfort and courage, between hiding and fighting, between pretending and truth, you'd choose right every single time, no matter the cost. Because some things are worth the cost, some fights are worth having, and some people are worth being, even when being them means everything changes. Elena Carter was one of those people, and she was just getting started,